Hey everyone, welcome back to the MHP Show podcast. Back to you with another episode this week. And on the MHP Show, we talk about anything and everything that has to do with mobile home parks, operations, crazy stories, the good and the bad and the ugly of investing in this awesome asset class. I've got another guest with us today. I've got Mr. Ryan Groene. Ryan, he played 4 years of college baseball. And without getting too deep into it, because I'll let him do that. And now he owns over 1,500 lots. Ryan's company, Treeside Capital, has been operating mobile home parks for how long now?
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah, 6 to 8 years. So, oh my God.
That's awesome. Well, yeah. Well, welcome to the show, Ryan.
Well, thanks for having me, Derek. I appreciate you having me on. I enjoy the podcast, and hopefully we can help some people out, or just get to know me a little bit better. And I think I met you a few years ago, just through a local person that we both know, and looking to connect some more.
Yeah, for sure. So I always like to start the show with my favorite question of the show is like, what was your first entrepreneurial journey before you got into trailer parks?
I wish I had a glorious story. And I wish I had something where I was like selling baseball cards when I was like 10 years old or something. I don't have that, unfortunately. My first entrepreneurial journey was like true business wise was probably more of a book, right? I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in college while I was going to school for finance, right? And while I was going to school for finance, I mean, they were training us to basically go work on Wall Street, right? Basically work in investment banking or be a private equity guy. I'm nowhere. I found out quickly I was not smart enough to do that. And I went to New York City once. I didn't like it. I didn't want to live there. And I didn't want to work 100-hour weeks, really at all. And so my entrepreneurial journey kind of started in college, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, graduated college, got a corporate finance job. Started looking at businesses to buy, laundromats, car washes, small apartment buildings. And then I actually stumbled on mobile home parks just by pure chance. I was living at home at the time, and my dad's a general contractor. And he's like, hey, what if we flip a mobile home? Low cost entry, you can maybe live in it for a little bit. And then this was in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I'm from, was a 5-star community. Actually, technically, was a retiree community, but not legally. So I was still allowed to live there. I would have been the youngest in there by like 50 years, but was still allowed to live there. So that didn't end up happening. I kind of went down the rabbit hole of who owns the mobile home park. Went to the Frank and Dave boot camp in 2015. And then that kind of started my whole journey into mobile home parks. Now, kind of backing up my entrepreneurial journey from a kid, you could say that early on, my parents looked at buying car washes, laundromats, like looked at buying a bunch of stuff and then never actually bought anything. So I guess maybe subconsciously when I was a child, like 10 to 15, they were looking at stuff, dragging us around, looking at that stuff. And then my dad actually went out on his own probably when I was like 16, 17. So he's his own general contractor. So long story short, I don't have anything crazy. I just knew that I wanted to do this a long time ago. So whether it was, and the vehicle just happened by chance to be mobile home parks.
Yeah, that's great, man. And so did you have a 9-to-5 job? Did you have like a 9-to-5 job before you started investing?
Yeah. So when I got out of college, I was a financial advisor, financial planner, had all my licenses, could sell stock and get commission and all that fun stuff. That lasted about 6 months. And then I went to work for a Fortune 500 company. In the kind of financial analysis type role. Did that for a number of years up until 2017. Knew I wanted to do mobile home parks or apartments or something when I was like in 2014, 15, right? So I had a 9-to-5 up until 2018. So my first park, I had a job. Actually, my first few parks, I still had a full-time job. And then I have not had a full-time job, quote unquote, where I was a W-2 employee since 2018. So I've been doing this full time now since then. The first couple of years were, you're always kind of feeling it out, but I was in my 20s. So I was 25 when I started. And I knew I could take a lot more risk because I didn't have any kids. And I wasn't like 50 years old where I was throwing my career away. I mean, I was making good money, but I wasn't making like, $500,000 a year doing, finance, right? So if that was the case, it might have been a little bit different. But the corporate lifestyle was not for me. And it didn't fit my personality, right? I'm not a person that is a 9 to 5 person. I don't mind working. It's just, I had a little bit more entrepreneurial basis in me than the normal 9 to 5. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's a good place to start. It's actually a good safety net. And mobile home parks allow you a lot of times to have a full-time job because that's what funds your parks. That's what gives you a bank loan, and it also allows you to, put more money into the park instead of buying a park and be like, now I got to pay my bills and because I don't have a job, right? So I would actually typically I advise people to keep their job unless they have enough saved or they have other sources of income where they don't need it anymore, right? I kind of quit on a whim, or some might say got asked to leave, but that's another topic. But anyways, long story short, I went out and then I did some side jobs here and there, and I still do, right? You just take it what you can get. But 20 parks later, this is my full-time job, and it's kind of not going back. So I can always get another job. So
yeah, for sure. Like once you get out of it, and so my job, it was it was a corporate job for sure, but it was 100% commission. I was a quasi entrepreneur, and so I could make my own schedule to a degree, but you still had to answer to this person and that person, and it just definitely wasn't for me.
Yeah. I think the easiest transitions that I've seen collectively from whether it just be full-time career to real estate or even another business as a whole is a lot of guys that are in sales, right? That typically, which your role was a sales role, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
My business partner, Miles, he has a sales background. And then other guys that I know have had a sales background because it can lead to where you're already a little bit more based on yourself, right? You're the end all be all because it's commission based, right? When you have a salary, 9 to 5, it is a little bit harder of a transition potentially because you're used to that paycheck, right? And it does become the first couple times it's scary, right? And when your bank account gets real low and you've dumped all your money into a park, that's like 100% in, right? There's no plan B. Been there plenty of times. And sometimes it doesn't work. So what allows that is if you do it young enough, or if you have a spouse that has a job still, right? You can go out and do it if you're on the same page with them. Or you pay yourself from the park. Maybe you be the manager for a little bit. Maybe you just take a little cut of the pay because you're the asset manager. There's plenty of income still within the park related business that you can pay yourself. You may just have to do it for a short time period. I've managed many parks just by myself because we either let a manager go or we take over a property and I pay myself that role. I don't necessarily do it as much anymore, but I used to.
Yeah, and it's once you've got all tenant-owned homes, it's not rocket science how to run these things. So you can do it, and especially if you still got a full-time job. And I agree with Ryan completely. Like I think you should keep it. Like I kept mine as long as I could until it wasn't feasible anymore. And so I hear from people all the time that they're, apprehensive or they use that as an excuse of having that job and it doesn't allow them to freedom to do things. But you just got to get better at managing your time. Like, how did you do that? Were you prospecting for parks when you still worked, or how did that dynamic actually work when you were still working that job?
Yeah. So when I went to the Frank and Dave boot camp, which was like the 3-day boot camp back in the day, my first experience was, hey, we're going to go tour this park in Austin. There may be people protesting because we raised the rent, right? And I'm like, what the hell? And it was a trailer park, right? I'd only been in a few. I didn't grow up in one. I grew up a pretty normal life. Always had whatever I needed. So I'm not like, I did bootstrap my way once I got into the park business, but growing up, I had everything I needed. So I'd never really been in a mobile home park. And so, kind of that transitional period. Sorry, I totally blanked on the question.
It's all good. It's all good.
No, I lost my train of thought because I started talking about the boot camp and kind of the 9 to 5 and kind of that transitional period is a little bit tougher for some, but it can be done. So, and
Yeah.
so basically back when I started prospecting wise, I would go home, I'd have my database, I'd actually handwrite my own mailers. And back in 2015, 16, even 14, you could handwrite mailers to the guys that owned a 200 site park and you would get a response. And they'd be like, I'd sell it for X price. And then all of the experts are saying, hey, you should buy at you should buy at a 9, 10 cap. Because interest rates back in 2014 or 15 were like 5 and 6%. They weren't as high as what they were now, but they were 5, 6, 7% in certain instances. And a lot of times, you would look at the deal and be like, that's too costly. The deal flow was a lot greater then. I was very inexperienced sales wise. I was very experienced real estate wise. So I just missed I did miss a lot of opportunities for guys that had reached out to me. I'd send 100 handwritten letters or even typed letters. I'd probably get 8 to 12 calls or at least emails back saying, and it was a 10% response. Now it significantly dropped off in like 2018 to 20. You would get less than 1% response nowadays. Because a lot of those parks have turned over to institutional guys like me and you that aren't even institutional, but we don't just own 1 and 2 parks. We're not mom and pop, but and then even then, the smaller guys that have built portfolios are now selling those to the larger portfolio, the larger guys, right? So it's been consolidated quite significantly over the last 8 years that I've been in the business. And when I started, I did everything myself. So it was cheap. And I'm glad I did it that way because like if somebody's like, hey, I got this park in this area, I'm like, yeah, I know the park. I know who owns it because I know my database. Literally, it's like by memory. Yep. It's almost like a Rain Man type. Like I can remember every single park, and it's a sickness. But I did that because I built my own database. I may not know it as much anymore in certain areas because we're a little bit spread out. But like in Cincinnati area and Indiana and parts of Ohio, I pretty much know all the parks and all the owners to some degree. So I'm glad I did it that way. Now I would do it a little bit differently if I had more disposable income at the time. I would have probably paid some VAs, paid some higher level staff to build it, and then I would take all the calls myself. Because if you have time to take the calls, you're going to connect with the owner a lot more than paying a VA or paying somebody, unless they are a true sales role and they understand the concept of real estate. But you have a lot of single family wholesale guys or guys that transition into mobile home parks, and they think it's all about leads and volume. In the park business, you don't have a lot of volume because there's only 50,000, right? And of that 50, you're probably going after like 20 to 30, right? Yep. 1,000. So the leads need to be handled with a lot more like higher level personnel, or just somebody that understands that every lead, it could lead to the lead 5 years from now, right? So, you can pull up any neighborhood in the United States and you have 100 houses in a little town, right? So that's way more and they may only have 1 mobile home park. So your leads have to be handled with a little bit more finesse than like just, hey, okay, what's the price? Move on to the next one, right? You can do that. But if you're only buying in select areas, you may only have 100 parks within a 3-hour radius of you, right? It's not very many. So your handling of the acquisition and the lead flow need to be handled with a little bit higher level personnel in my experience. We still handle a lot of our own leads, right? We may have an appointment setter, but we still handle a lot of the day-to-day of the acquisition. Now, there is a certain point where your business will reach a level, but nowadays there's a lot more wholesalers, there's a lot more brokers that are a lot better at the business than what it used to be. So I get more leads from off-market leads from those 2 sources than we do by just cold calling. So,
yeah, for sure. And we get the same amount. I mean, we get a lot of deals and deal flow from wholesalers and brokers now. I mean, there's some of them that have gotten better at what they do. Not all of them. Right. But
it's created equal, right? And a lot of the brokers, a lot of people don't know, and I don't even know if I can share this. But they also own parks. So a lot of people, same with any other industry. It's the same consistency. Apartment brokers, single family, they own real estate, right? They're selling stuff that maybe they may not meet their criteria, or it's just they don't want to buy it, right? And a lot of times they're not buying every lead; they're buying a select few here and there. So take that with a grain of salt to the listeners. But brokers know parks, right? They know real estate. A lot of times, commercial brokers are on the whole probably a little bit better than if you had a residential broker listing a mobile park. A lot of times they know the deals, they know the the game because they've been at it. So, but deal flow in 2023, yeah, I was gonna say, is it 2023? I'm already on 2024, has significantly dropped off. We have not bought a single park, both RV or mobile home park, this year. And it's just been, one, it's because of the rates. And two, it's just deal flow has slowed up because people are still wanting prices for 2021 and 2020 prices. And I want the same, right? If I sell the park, I don't want to sell it a 10 cap.
I want a 4 cap too.
Exactly. So guys that are selling are just like, I'll just wait until rates go down, if they go down. But also, I will say there are more deals getting creative that I've seen kind of come back on the table, right? Maybe they're entertaining seller financing. People are still doing deals. Lending is still happening. Lending is not like what it was in 2008 or even during COVID. Lending is still out there. You just have to have a little bit more down potentially, and your rate's going to be higher. So it's not penciling out, right, from a DCR perspective, which is the debt coverage ratio. It's just not penciling out like it was 2-3 years ago. I mean, it's way more costly to borrow than what it was. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I tell people that aren't familiar with the industry, Ryan, I tell them, I've got investors. They're like, oh, you got any deals? I'm ready. I'm like, so to let me explain to you this, like, so in 2021, and you can tell me what your thoughts are on this, but if we looked at 20 deals, you could sort of make sense of all of them in a way. Now you look at 20, maybe one of them warrants step 2, like maybe. So I don't know what you're seeing, but that's what we're seeing. I mean, it's just we have to look at a lot of deals now.
Yeah, it's basically kind of the deals that we talked to maybe 2-3 years ago. It's circling back, right? I'm ready to sell, but it's like, okay, you want that price from a long time ago, so you're either going to have to carry the paper, right? And we can even do terms that make sense, but you can't get your price in your terms unless it's a really good price, right? But we're seeing the same thing. I'm not seeing as many guys or gals raise money like they were, right? I don't see as many emails about, I got this deal going on, I'm raising. More of it's just like a lot of guys are just refocusing on their portfolio, or they're recapitalizing deals they already had, right? They're like, because now they're like, well, now that we're not growing, maybe let's infill some homes. Let's take this money here, infill some lots, make some rehabs, fix some stuff, right? And it's not a great time to refinance. I mean, there is still some Fannie Mae debt, but what I'm seeing and hearing a little bit more deal wise is the Fannie Mae loans that were done in 2020 or even 2019 for that fact are now coming up. People are like, well, I'm at the end of my 3-year cycle, 5-year cycle. I want to sell, or they just want to be out of business completely. And the assumable loans, assuming the loan is becoming a little bit more popular, right? You're still going to have some cash. Still going to have a pretty decent balance sheet to get on that loan. Yeah. But that deal flow above 2-3 million purchase price wise is happening. I know for a fact, I probably count 2 or 3 people that I know that are doing that right now. So I would still do those deals because that interest rate is locked in at like 3%, 4%, right? So you can buy it at a 6 cap, right? And those deals are kind of tricky because a lot of times you're gonna be typically in the 50 to 60% LTV range. You're not going to be in the 20% right. Because you're going to have to give cash to the buyer or to the seller, and then also Fannie Mae wants some reserves or some loan pay down in the meantime as well. Because assumptions are nice, but it's basically like a brand new purchase. Still to do your due diligence, they still do their diligence on you. But the good thing about Fannie Mae and CMBS debt is that it's non-recourse. Yep. I don't hear many people doing CMBS at the moment, but I still do hear agency is still out there and still getting done. But yeah, I mean, those are kind of where we are. It's a stagnant business at the moment with a lot of commotion still. Right? There's still guys doing deals, but I would say on the whole, the deals that are getting done are sub 50 sites. So is what.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of smaller stuff get done for sure. And I just got sent a deal the other day with the situation you were just talking about. It was an assumable Fannie loan. But our guys ran the numbers and I'm like, this guy's not making any money. Like it's still like too big of a number to even make sense of. And the rate was like I don't know, 3.75 or something. And it still didn't make sense. I'm like, no wonder this guy wants to get out of it because he's like dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah.
But
so they may have to take a price reduction too, right? So
yeah.
and then basically just means the loan assumption, the LTV may be you might be a little bit higher. But I think deals can still get done. So
yeah, for sure.
And I'm selling a park right now where we literally just want to sell the park. We don't want to put more money into it. We're kind of done with our play. And somebody asked us to carry a small second, and we're actually doing it. I wouldn't normally do that. Actually, it's not even a small second. We'll be in first position because they're basically paying cash, and then it's a small park. It's like 30 lots. It's my smallest park to date that I still own. And we're basically they're cashing us out, and then we're going to carry a small position, but it's first position. So it's for a short time period. It's like 24, 36 months. So
yeah,
that is also coming back a little bit, the creativeness. And I think deal flow is going to pick up, but I think it just depends on what's happening macro and then also even within your own little towns too. Right. So, and different places. So,
yeah. Yeah. And that's good insight. And I've seen, I don't know if you've seen this, but I've gotten, let's just say 6 months ago, I got sent deals from XYZ broker and wholesaler at 3.5 million. And I'm like, dude, it's not going to happen. I'm at 2.5.
mm-hmm.
And now they're coming back and they were like, screw you. And then they come back around and now they're like, hey, he'll take 3. Is your offer still on the table? And I'm like, well, rates, I could still get 6.5 then. Now I'm getting, I have to go with 8. So I don't even know if I can get to that number anymore. So I'm seeing some like a little movement, but still not where we need to be.
Yeah, we had it happen to us. We put a deal under contract that we were selling back in like May. And then we had some legal stuff going on with the actual, not the entitlement, but some variants and some actual zoning issues. So that takes time, right? And when we all got it passed, it was like fall. And from June to then, it went from 6 to, or even 5.5 to like 8%. So I was like, I knew it was coming. We said no. So it ended up falling out of contract essentially. So, right. Because I mean, I couldn't take that big of a price reduction just because, it just happens. I mean, you're going to fall out of deals when you sell parks. It's going to fall out of contract. I've done enough transactions. Typically, when something's going to move forward or when it's not. But then I've been surprised too when I've sold parks or bought parks that we didn't think we were going to buy and we end up buying it, because you may have to ask for a legit concession or a price reduction just because some things could be wrong. For example, in 2022, we were buying a mobile home park that was septic city water. We're like, what are all these septic bills? Like, why are you pumping each month? He's like, oh, I just pump the tanks, just good maintenance.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Like, yeah, no, they're failing. So we got them inspected and they were failing. We're like, hey, so give you your price, but you're going to have to, that money is going to have to sit in escrow. So we can either reduce the price by this amount, or you can let it sit in escrow. I think they think they're going to get that money back, but it's set and we're going to use it all. Because sewer conversion is really expensive, especially in the last 3 years, prices have gone up significantly. And that project's been 18 months. We're still not connected. So we still pump the septics once a month because the leach fields are they don't work. So, and we're in an area of the country where it's not like a sand base. So we're in a clay based scenario. So you don't really have a lot of good filtration. You need a lot of land and long leach fields in order to make that permeable. So yeah, I still like the park business. We also in 2021 to 2023 we started buying RV parks as well. We kind of transitioned into that just because the deal flow was a little bit better, cap rates were better, and we were getting the same debt. We were getting 4 and 5% debt on RV parks. That not Fannie, but still recourse through local banks. And we were getting the same debt that we were getting in mobile home parks. So we started buying those a little bit. We run them more like a mobile home park from like a non-transient basis. We like long-term customers. But overall, if you were to ask me which business I like better relative to the return, I like mobile home parks better. I mean, it's a more stable cash flow and it's less management intensive. So it's still business, but the RV business is more of in the hospitality realm, and it's way more business like than the mobile home park business. The mobile home park business is a real estate business. RV is real estate with hospitality and then some other stuff going in there as well. So
Yeah,
businesses are great and kind of fit hand in hand, but it's just different assets.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious about the RV business. And so we've looked at we have some RVs scattered around the portfolio, like 3 or 4 in a park or something.
Yeah.
And so all the tenants that we get are totally long term. Like they come in and they stay forever. So are you buying mostly long term stuff? I know you mentioned something there about long term and transient.
So there's 3 different types of RV parks. And with our mobile home portfolio, we also have some RVs. So you're exposed to the asset class or the customer kind of initially anyways in a lot of your mobile homes, mobile home parks. Especially if you own in like the Southeast, there's a lot of people that live in them in the South, especially in the winter. In the US. And so basically there's 3 types of RV parks. There is your traditional campground, like think of a KOA, Jellystone, where you come in, you camp on the weekend, you leave, right? That's what's called a transient park. And then there's a seasonal park where people leave their campers there maybe year round, or you have like in Ohio, you have a season from April to October, right? Where you're open. People leave their campers there all the time, right? They don't take them home. They got decks, they got sheds. They got all kinds of stuff. They don't live there. It's a secondary home. It's a cheaper version of a lake house or mountain house, or right, somewhere to get away for folks, right? And then there's the third option, which is like the extended stay RV parks. That is more of a living scenario where people live there in their campers. There's about 4 to 5 million Americans that live in their campers full time. That number I think is actually a lot higher because I think the last time they did that was like 10 years ago. Some of those stats and that could even be like 6 months out of the year they live in it, right? They may, like, for example, we have some campers in Ohio that come up in Ohio, they live in their RVs during the summer, and then in the winter they go back south or they go to the Sun Belt and they have homes there, condos, townhomes, apartments, right? Where they just may live in their camper 6 months out of the year. So the extended stay is more like a mobile home park run, right? It's just they live there, so you're enforcing rules. You're a little bit more. You have a little bit more. You have a different little clientele than sometimes it can be somebody that maybe should be living in a mobile home park, but they're living in an RV because it's a little bit cheaper form of life and they like to travel. But then you also have the higher end of customers that the guy might be making $1 million or just sold his business, and they got $1 million fifth wheel or RV where they pull in, but they're still next to the extended stay camper because you're the only park in town that will allow it. So we have all 3, and then within that you have blends of those communities to where you might have seasonal section, a transient section. But on the whole, my favorite is the extended stay RV because it's affordable housing, right? So it kind of falls under the umbrella of mobile home parks. Our investment thesis on why we bought the RV parks and kind of what we look at when we're looking at a deal, we want 70-80% full hookup, water, sewer, electric, right? And we want to be in a good location because you can't fix location. I can fix everything else. I can't fix location. And that holds true regardless of what asset business you're doing. And then our investment thesis basically is if the economy tanks or housing becomes so expensive, people aren't going to live in a mobile home, right? Because there's a lot of inventory, a lot of stigmas that go with the business. They would rather live in an RV because they may have a camper paid off. Their house just got foreclosed on or they sold it and now they have proceeds, but they can't buy another house because that house that they just sold is now worth something that they wouldn't pay. So now they're living in an RV, right? Over the next 5 to 10 years, I think more people are going to be living in RVs along with mobile homes than before, because I think housing is going to continue to get out of hand. Even the mobile homes nowadays, when I was buying homes in 2018, they were 30 grand. Now they're 50 and they're worse product, right? So it's like, even from our standpoint, we're providing affordable housing. Where does it become not affordable, right? And I don't know where that line is. I think we're going to breach it here in the next 24 months, pending what happens with some overseas stuff. But it's a weird time to be in the business because you also have a lot of these parks that are 50 years old, and you have to go in and you have to redo the entire water lines. You got to redo the roads, the sewer system. They're past their useful life, and we now have to fix them. And that is I don't know how old you are, Derek, but I'm 33. And if I continue to be in this business for the next 20, 30 years, I'm probably going to have to replace every single utility road in all of my parks. And that's even the electrical line. And a lot of people don't realize that when they look at a park, they're like, yeah, it's working, but what is that working like in the next 10 years, right? So you have to start saving for it now, which is you basically your replacement reserve. Set aside 50 to $100 a lot per year, put it in a bank account, don't worry about it. Over the course of 10 years, that'll be your safety cushion potentially. I would actually, for the older parks, and if you have private utilities, I'd double it and put it at 200 a lot, because that's probably what it's going to cost to connect public utilities. Because a lot of municipalities and states are forcing people to get on public once it fails. So,
yeah.
I mean, the RV business we like. We're not buying any at the moment. We will buy deals, but it's an affordable housing play if there's a crazy downturn and like depression wise, or even if affordable housing gets so high, people are going to live in an RV. Personally, I'd rather live in an RV than a mobile home and an RV park, because a lot of times they're better destinations. You also have some amenities that the mobile home parks don't have. So.
Yeah, for sure. What do you guys usually see from an expense ratio standpoint on your RV parks? I guess I'm sure it's different for each of the three types that you mentioned, but can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, so mobile home parks were typically, 30 to 45% expense load, right, depending on who pays utilities. And then the RV park business is typically 43 to 45%, to 55 to 60. Depends on really if you pay electric, that's the biggest expense you're gonna see line item wise. Water and sewer not going to be that big because they're not going to use as much, because they may not be living there all the time, right? And even if they are, they may be using your bathhouse. So the water is centralized to one place. Your electric is going to be your biggest expense. We're typically anywhere from $50 to $200 per site on electric. And a lot of times we bill that back. We don't bill all of our communities back, but 9 times out of 10, we're billing it back or passing through what our rate is, right? So we're recouping that cost. But the overall quick evaluation on an RV park is very similar to a mobile home park. The only difference is your top line. You really want to look at the last 3 years of the top line revenue, right? So what are they bringing in the last 3 years? Throw 50% expense ratio on it, and then multiply by the cap rate you desire or the price they're asking, right? You're not gonna run the park unless you're managing it yourself, doing all the maintenance. You may get 30%, but the RV parks are going to be 50% because things break a lot more, right? You have water lines like spigots, septic. I mean, there's a lot more stuff that goes into it. Also, you have to put more back into the community. Not saying we don't do that in the mobile home park world, but like we have pools at all of our stuff. Our insurance rates are higher. We have docks. We have Airbnbs. We have hotels. We have wood. We have a liquor store at one of them. We sell beer and wine. And people expect amenities, so you have to spend a little bit more just to get back. We have bands that come in, so it costs a little bit more to run an RV park on the whole than it does a mobile home park, because it's housing versus it's necessity housing versus wants, right? A lot of times people want to be at that RV park. They don't necessarily have to be. So it's a little bit different of a mindset. Now that doesn't mean we're catering to every need they have, right? They got to pay their rent, no pay, no stay, and no play, no stay. We still run that type of business. We're just a little bit more, we're not as frugal as we would be in the mobile home park, right? We still are putting back safe, clean, affordable housing. That's what we try to provide in the mobile home park play, but we're not spending as much as what we would per customer like we do in the RV parks. So,
yeah, no, that's interesting. That's good insight, because we've been looking at some RV parks, and I've been looking at, the electric expense is just freaking crazy.
Oh.
And so you guys bill that back, like you'll just charge them back for it, or you charge like a flat amount, or how does that?
It depends on the park. We typically, the old owners will have sub-meters. If it's a seasonal park, if it's a transient, so let me start. The transient parks where you come in, stay for a week, leave, you're not going to bill for electric. You're going to eat that cost because your rates are going to be a little bit higher per day. So that kind of makes up for it. When you have a seasonal park where people live there, extended stay, you want to put meters on, or at least charge a flat fee, right? We have meters on all of our sites, except for one park. And we just include it in the lot rent. Basically, we just raise the rent to kind of compensate enough for it, but we'll probably roll out next year like a flat electric fee on top of lot rent. But a lot of times you got to have meters. Metron has meters, electric meters, and then also there's a company called Wild Energy. Both are remote read. directly to your phone. It integrates with Rent Manager. Wild Energy, I don't think integrates with Rent Manager, but obviously Metron does. And it's the same kind of like scenario as water and sewer. Water submeters are, heck, you and I can put in water submeters. It's actually really easy. Quickly, you just cut it, hook it, and glue it at the same time. But it depends on the water lines too. It depends on the type of line. But anyways, electric meters you need a professional to put those in a lot of times because there is a little bit more, depending on the pedestal and the type of meter, it's a little bit more nuanced to putting it in. But overall, yeah, we always charge for electric, and you should, right? Any apartment house, that you live in or rent, you're going to get charged electric nowadays, unless it's just included in the rent, but your rent might be a little bit higher. So,
yeah. What's the recapture rate on the electric? Like, because I know water is, it's iffy.
Yeah, so it really depends on the park, right? It depends on, and this kind of goes for mobile home parks too, and even apartment buildings. It depends on how many amenities you have, because your electric bill, if you have a pool and you have a clubhouse and you have all these other amenities, your electric bill is going to be a little bit higher. So the recapture is going to look a little off if you just have electric bills and then recapture. We're always modeling for around 70 to 80%. That's what we're looking for going in. Overall, typically we're around that. We might be at 60% recapture in some parks. And then some parks, I have water meters on the park, but it might just be too small to even worry about. So we just started flat fee sometimes, because it also depends on state law too, right? A lot of times we put meters on the home water-wise just to gauge the usage, right? To know if somebody's got a leak in the dead of winter, maybe they're not there, and there's a leak just spraying, and we get the notification, right? Hey, maintenance, our maintenance guy, go fix it, right? Same with electric. We want to just know usage, right? And if somebody's got stuff plugged in, they're going to know. And we typically will tell them, hey, you got a little bit, I don't know what's going on, but you got something a little bit higher. So recapture is very similar to water, somewhere in the 60 to 80% range across our portfolio. We're never at 100%. We may be occasionally close to that on a monthly basis if you were to take away all the other amenity stuff. But overall in the electric bill, because you're going to have to evict people. People are going to move out and not pay their bill. We have that at a lot of times. People will be like, oh, done with the park. And, you're billing in arrears. So they're going to leave. And that's why you take an electrical deposit a lot of times too. That kind of compensates for that a little bit. If you take $100 when they move in, or take a security deposit when they move in on the transient or extended stay parks, sorry, not the transient, but the seasonal parks and the extended stay parks, and even mobile home parks, take a security deposit, because there will be a time where you'll have to use that. Most of the time. So
yeah, for sure.
A lot.
What was that? You said you went out, it muffled up there for a second. What did you say?
I said, especially when they move out and they leave a mess, or you have to evict them, right? The security deposit comes in.
Yeah. No, if you evict somebody, they leave a mess. We've never had that happen. Ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Never.
Yeah. Or my favorite story was we were evicting a lady, and she had the cable guy there. The cable guy showed up as we're setting our stuff out. She didn't think we were going to follow through with the eviction. So.
Yeah, we had a lady. I was talking to a guy earlier about this. Her, she was in the eviction process, just a disaster. She had these hellion of kids in the park, and I get a picture one day. The kids, now mind you, this park has trees around. There's a lot of trees in this park, and these kids have a fire that's probably 10 foot in the air, going in the middle of the park, and we're getting calls. It's I'm getting pictures, and it's oh my God, that could have gotten pretty bad quickly. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't even know if a security deposit would have did anything with that.
Yeah.
But
or deny we did stuff that as kids. But so yeah, anyways.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So what do you for somebody new starting out in the business, do you think, I guess, what's your opinion on starting now, and should they start now? I mean, my theory on this is that, I wish I would have bought more stuff in 2021 and at the end of 2020. I wish I would have gotten in earlier. And I tell people in 2 years, you're going to wish the same if you didn't get in now. So what's your thoughts on that?
I would say I would agree with that. I would say if you're looking to be a real estate investor, define whether mobile home parks are for you, or even RV parks, or what asset class is going to fit your need, right? And then there's no reason why you got to go buy 100 site parks, city water, city sewer. There are plenty of guys that have bought plenty of parks that are 10 lots, 20 lots, 30 lots, right? Maybe you want to get your feet wet, and you want to buy a small park because it doesn't require as much of a capital commitment, doesn't require necessarily as much time, depending on if you're buying a turnaround or not. Buy a park that fits your lifestyle, meaning like if you only want to get your feet wet, buy a small park. Do not go buy a 200 site park unless you got a lot of capital to place. You're going to lose more money if you don't know what you're doing. But at the same time, I didn't start flipping houses. I bought a 75 site mobile home park with 4 people that I met on the internet, and literally emptied my 401k. So I'm not a great example of how to start. I just kind of knew what I wanted and went all in, right? So sometimes you have to do that. If you're 45 years old, you got 3 kids and a mortgage, and your spouse doesn't work, I would say don't quit your job unless you got a bunch of savings and you're not going to use that for a down payment. Keep your job because it makes you bankable. Lending people, even in the commercial realm, they like people that have jobs. Even though I may have a greater net worth and make more than them, W-2 up until about $2 million, $3 million, people still like. Anything above that, it kind of gets in a different lending category. But yes, if you're going to become a real estate investor, plenty of deals out there. Start now, because if you don't start, then it's going to be 10 years from now and you never bought anything, right? You can always sell it. You can always turn it over to a third party manager. Obviously, if you buy a larger park, there are some advantages of that than buying smaller. Do not go out and buy a 10 site park 6 hours from you, unless literally your family lives in that area and they're going to help you manage it, because you're not going to be able to manage that effectively. Go out, look what you're like, get educated first. There's plenty of free education. There's Derek's podcast. There's 10 podcasts on mobile home park investing. There's plenty of books nowadays. There's plenty of people. There's plenty of forums. There's plenty of Facebook stuff. There is way more stuff now than what there was even when I started in 2015. There was like 3 guys. And the one guy's still doing it. The other 2, I think, are, as far as like courses go, right? And you don't have to spend a lot of money to become educated in the space. Get educated, and then maybe even like ride along, go to parks with people. There are plenty of people that'll allow you to go with them. I know Mario was doing that for a while. He was like letting people go with him to the parks and stuff like that. I'll do that too. I don't do it all the time, but there's plenty of I take calls all the time from people that want to just get into the space, talk about the business. And honestly, if you find a deal, that's the number one value right now. Or if you have money, right? There's 3 legs to a deal: time. What is it? Time to run it, money, and then what's the third? I always forget the third one. The deal itself, maybe. I think that's the third one.
Yeah.
I don't really know. But if you got time or money, or you got both, then you're in a good position. If you got money, even you don't have time, you're also in a good position. If you got a bunch of time and no money, get educated, because then you can become the expert to the person that has money, right? Because they'll put up the cash, and if you run the park, you then will become a little bit wealthier, park by park. It doesn't happen overnight, right? It takes a couple parks to build your net worth. You may find that lucky outlier nowadays where you buy a park for $100,000, it becomes worth $1 million. That really rarely exists anymore. You're more like doubling or even giving like 70% of the park's value what you bought it, unless you're doing huge infill or turnaround projects. That's a different number. But the business has changed a little bit. Returns have come down a little bit than what they were 10, 15 years ago. And that's one just due to consolidation and popularity, and kind of just speaks to the safeness of the asset too. If you buy a park and do nothing, 70% of your residents, if they're good residents, will still pay their rent. It's the old 80-20 rule. 80% of people still pay their bills. Even if you've never talked to them, send them a bill. They'll still mail you a check. I guarantee it. People still pay their bills. I still believe in people. The other 20% are going to cause you hell, and you just have to deal with that. So that's part of the business. You are dealing with another asset class.
that there's going to be some stuff that may shock you. But that's in any rental business. Even in the higher end luxuries, there's plenty of people that are disgusting. Like you need to evict, don't pay their bills, and they could be worse of a person than the person living in the mobile home park. So on a whole, good business. I like the business in the next 10 years. You got to start now. Otherwise, you'll never get started. So
yeah, for sure.
Deals, talking to people, being in the space, and then putting deals under contract. That's the next step.
Yeah, definitely. And that's like, I always preach the same thing. And I mean, that's great advice from Ryan and telling you, like, you got to actually assume, like, hey, look what Ryan's doing every day. He's looking at deals, talking to people, putting things under contract, all that. So you got to do the same thing, right? You have to do the same thing. It's the only way you're going to learn how to do it. And I mean, nowadays, like, there's so much stuff. I think people worry, like, if you put something under contract and then you have to back out of it for whatever reason. I mean, as long as you're not backing out of it just to back out of it, like you actually find legitimate reasons. Like, it's not the end of the world. People do it all the time. I mean, there's groups that put stuff under contract planning to retrade a week before closing. And like, that's not my game, but people do that. But you just got to get in the game and start.
Yeah, exactly. And there's plenty of older guys, younger guys, middle-aged people that'll help you. It's a very, very small space. When I first got started, I didn't understand that the people at the top can be reached, right? You just got to find out how to get in the same room with them. So that can be done. And you're going to also, as being a business owner, because you are a business owner, not just a real estate owner, if you're a true co-owner, operator of the park, not just an LP, a limited partner, or just a money partner, you're going to do a lot of stuff for free in the beginning, a lot of stuff for free. Heck, I still do a lot of stuff for free, right? I don't have a consulting business. I don't charge people for my time. I do every now and then if they want more of an advanced conversation, right? But an initial conversation, I'll spend 20, 30 minutes talking to somebody, getting to know them. Because what that does for me is I put in a lot of free time with people, and then they think of me in the future. And that's kind of one of my skill sets is I don't mind talking to people. I like talking with people. I like, educating people. And then also I like hearing people's stories in the future, because there may come a time where I call them and I punch that, kind of relationship transactional value, right? Because there is a lot of that in this business too. And at the end of the day, it's a people business. It's not a just sit back and collect it type of business. So you have to go out and collect your money. So that's my number one thing. It's follow up with these people. And 9 times out of 10, if they haven't paid, you got to go and knock on their door, and you may have to follow through with it. So 80% of people will pay without any questions asked, but the other 20, you got to go get it. So, and I've bought parks where it's been like, these people have been in these parks for 2 years and they never paid rent because the owner never knocked on their door. So, because I still don't get it, because people will be like, the owner never knocked on my door, so I never paid it. I got it all sitting right here in money orders. I'm like,
and we ran into that.
Yeah,
I'm like that just doesn't. Yeah. Anyways, we've seen the same thing, and it's super funny and comical. But Ryan, dude, I appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing knowledge. I mean, I know I was taking notes over here, and so I know our viewers are going to get a ton of value out of our conversation, man. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, appreciate having me on, and maybe look forward to connecting in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So where can people find you?
I used to have a LinkedIn page, but it got hacked. So I do not have a LinkedIn page, or I do, but it doesn't have my profile picture. I'm trying to get that redone, but I'm on Facebook, Instagram. Our website is also treesidecapital.com. You can just go to connect with us, and you can find us there.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Ryan. And that's it, everybody, for the MHP show. We will see you all next week. Please go on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, like and subscribe to the channels. If you love it, leave a comment. That's how we get pushed up the algorithm there. So please show us some support if you like the show, and we will see you next week. Peace.